Beginning Photoshop for Teachers, Learning the Tools continues. We're going to focus on two tools in this particular YouTube, which is a filter gallery. It's changing the photos, putting like a Photoshop stock filter on top of the picture. We're going to talk a little bit about adjustment layers, and also we're going to talk about how to use the clone stamp tool. So I'm going to do that by using the master's flag picture, which is posted in your contents. So I'm going to go File to Open. My master's flag happens to be set on my desktop, and I'm going to click Open. Now I know I can change this photo because I took it personally, and you can tell it was a long time ago, but fanny packs are back. So we're going to practice using the Layers panel, Adjustment Layers, Filter Gallery right now. Okay, you see that I have my Layers panel flown out. I can dock my Layers panel. I can fly my Layers panel. If you do not see a Layers panel anywhere, do not panic. Remember, if you go up to Window, down to Layers, see it doesn't have a check mark by it, so I don't have the layer showing. So I'm going to click on this Layers and pull it closer. By default, for some reason, Photoshop still locks the background layer. A couple different ways to do that. You can click and drag the lock down to the trash. You can create a new layer, which I can go to the new layer icon, which is the bottom right hand corner, or I can go up to Layer, New, down to Layer, click OK, okay, and then I can go ahead and unlock that. Okay, and now my layers have changed also. Okay, so now I have a regular layer, and I always want to say some good Photoshop techniques is to name those layers. So this is the base flag layer. Now, you never want to be what I have been taught as a quote-unquote pixel destroyer. So if I change this photo on the background layer, it is forever changed. And so if you want to best practices, get in the habit of duplicating this layer. A bunch of different ways to do that. You can do a control click, okay, or a control click, yes, thing, and then down to duplicate layer, click OK. You can also, I'm going to delete that layer, click and drag this layer down to the new layer icon, click, and it makes a copy. So now, no matter what, we always have this layer. So I can do anything in the world to this top layer of the picture, and I have not destroyed any original pictures for the picture. Okay, I also say that, and a client, my sister-in-law is in graphic design, and she will do exactly what the client asks, and they'll say, I don't like red. So then you can go back, peel all the layers off like an onion, change it super fast, and move on. I want to mention also the eyeball. This is the show hide. Okay, this is the show hide. So if you want to hide this layer, you can click OK, or I can even hide the very base layer. So this is just kind of a dummy layer that sits on the bottom that I know that if I ever needed to, I go back to this particular original picture. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the blend modes, layer blend mode. So I'm on layer. These are blend modes. Okay, and it really just takes a lot of experimentation, and this is between two different layers. So when a tutorial says layer blend mode, they mean for you to go to the layers panel, then click on the pull down and choose the lighten or screen or whatever they choose to. This also is your opacity. Opacity is extremely important. A lot of you guys picked up on this in the underwater scene, but making something more or less opaque within your layer order. So that's just a super simple layers panel explanation. So I'm going to click back on this layers panel. I'm going to actually hide my copy for right now. And I'm going to go up to filter, excuse me, then down to what is called filter gallery. Now there are all kinds of different filters that you can use. Okay, and it even says browse filters online. But I like to open the filter gallery because then I can see all of them at once. So once I click on this pullover, you can see where there's lots of different options. I'm under artistic now. And once I click on the artistic window of watercolor, I can then go over and then adjust how detailed, more or less detailed I like my brush. the intensity, texture, and then you can do that for really any of the different effects. So you should take a moment, actually take about 5 minutes, to look through the different filters that are available, because what's great is that this could be an effect that we do and then we can add text, so it won't fight, the picture won't fight with the text because there is a filter below it. There's even some sketch. I'm just going to kind of do a couple. I like this. We tend to use this one a lot with text that's easier to read. I'm just going to scroll through there. Okay, so this is Filter Gallery. I'm going to go ahead and click on the paint and then click OK. And so now I have actually changed the photo, okay? So that is a filter on the photo itself. Now, I'm going to go ahead and if I do not like what I have done, there's a couple different ways. I can go up to my undo panel. Okay, so Photoshop doesn't hold that many undos, which you can see with the Command Z. Okay, or you can also go to Window down to History, which is a new panel for us. And depending on how your settings in Photoshop are, you can come back to where you can see all the different times I switch my layers. I can even come back to my original image, or I have my history set for about 60 settings essentially. So I'm going to go back to where I have a duplicate layer because I'm going to restart. So that's your history panel. That's more effective in Photoshop than a Command or Control Z, which is typically an undo function. I somehow lock that. If you find a lock, you can just simply click and lock, click and drag that lock down to the trash can. I must have toggled on this button. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are adjustment layers. Okay, and adjustment layers are just something added on top. So you're not destroying any of the pixels, you're just putting something on top. So I'm going to go ahead and fly this panel so I can really work with it. Now for a second, hover over each just to see what it is. Hue, saturation, color, balance, brightness, contrast, levels, threshold, post-fire, gradient. We're just going to go to hue, saturation just so we can see. So it opens up another new panel. And from here I can change the sliders of the hue, lightness, darkness. I can even colorize a specific area. Okay, but you can also see in the layers panel how this puts essentially an adjustment layer on top. Okay, so I haven't changed the pixels or changed the original image. I have put an adjustment layer on top of it. So in photo editing, this is really the best practice, is to adjust and change and edit those photos on top of the original photos. Essentially brightness, contrast. I'm going to wash that out, I think. And even kind of decrease this opacity, because now what I'm doing is actually showing what's underneath. So just take a moment. This is really only for that, you know, when someone says an adjustment layer, what they're talking about. So I am underneath. If you don't have adjustments, I'm going to close these out. No biggie. Remember, window, adjustments, and you can fly or dock this panel. Okay, and those are your different adjustment layers. I'm going to come back to I'm actually going to see how I show hide. If I show hide, I will come back to my original, and I'm going to work on the copy instead of the original. And now we're going to move on to the clone stamp tool. And this is essentially, this is another selection tool. I'm going to get rid of this pesky tourist. That's what I'm going to get rid of. And I'm actually going to, probably not in this one, I'm going to have you guys try rebuilding another golf cart where these gentlemen are standing. So it's only the flagpole and 2 golf carts and no tourists standing. So I'm going to go ahead and dock these panels because I'm really going to be working with the window. And since I'm going to be so detailed, i.e. I'm going to cut this person and really essentially remake the image, I'm going to zoom in. So I go over to my zoom tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, take my space bar, toggling back and forth on the space bar, uses your hand tool, and I'm going to start in the corner. Now, this may be too much for you. Then I went back to my zooming out tool, then use my space bar, toggling it as a hand, click and drag so it positions where you're comfortable. But for demo purposes, I think I'll go out one more actually. And I did an Alt or Option to do a zoom out tool. So zooming in, zooming out are the same tool, but with your Option or Alt key. Okay, so my clone stamp tool, it looks like it's the 7th or 8th tool down on the left-hand side. I'm going to click on this clone stamp tool, and I click once. Now, I want you to see this is not an error window. I always tell my students we're very guilty of this. We just click on through. Oh my gosh, it didn't work. Well, it gives you what you should be doing. Could not use the clone stamp because the area to clone has not been defined. Option click to define a source point. Oh, okay, that's how you use that tool. So I'm going to hold down Option, and now look what my cursor does. It turns into a target. That is a source point, or the target. So if I Option click here, my source point is going to be the green grass. So watch what happens now is that it actually paints green grass. And it's very faint, but you can see the crosshairs on this side painting the green grass. Now you constantly have to go back and reset it. So I'm coming back with my cursor, Option click, and then painting. You can bracket down to the left, or you can bracket up to make a larger brush. So if I want to, kind of swiftly work through this, I'm going to Option click, Option click, Option click. Now, you know what, I'm getting kind of detailed here, so my brush is too large, so I'm going to left bracket, left bracket, left bracket, go reset, and really click. I'm going to try to make a nice line here. Now my shadows are not perfect by any stretch. And now I'm going to remake the road right now, so my brushes are way too big. So I'm going to left bracket, left bracket, left bracket, left bracket, Option click. I'm going to go Option click out here, actually, give myself some room. And then you see how my crosshairs, it's painting exactly where my crosshairs go. Now, starting, you see how I'm repainting her sweatshirt? Because that's where my crosshairs were. So I have to constantly go back and Option click, Option click, Option click. And I'm going to put a little green, I'm going to essentially rebuild some dark green grass. I have to constantly go back. Okay, a little break in the grass, but that's looking okay. And I've kind of lost focus here, so I'm going to start back up here. So I'm going to scroll back up, and then I'm going to start down a little bit. So I'm going to Option click into my trees and just gently bring those down. Here's a difficult part, so I'm going to left bracket to make an even smaller brush. I'm going to Option click and then remake this top. Option click. Now I'm fudging a little bit because I don't feel like there's a good trunk, so I'm just going to have the trees come down. I'm going to have, okay, there we go. And then I'm going to choose this tiny brush and just go a little bit at a time to get rid of that. Now it's not exactly true, but I'm going to rebuild this photo. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the golf cart at the seat and make this my target point. Then I'm going to come over and literally rebuild a golf cart. And I'm going to go Option click and go back to the tire and rebuild my tire. And I'm just going to really remake this car I'm a little high on that. Then working my way back down. Come up where it's fairly easy. And we're not going to get the road perfect, so I might have to reimagine the road slightly. I'm just working my way through, and for demonstration purposes, wow, fix that mistake. Okay, so even though it looks like my golf cart has a flat tire, so I'm going to come back here. There we go, that's a little better. Still looks like the back tire's a little up in the air. Okay, so now I have quickly gotten rid of the person using the clone stamp tool. Okay, it is frustrating, it takes a while. It's really great to do target source and get used to drawing with your mouse, and there are several different ways to do this. Now, what I'm going to do, you do not have to do this, you can only watch. I'm going to come back to all of my good work of getting rid of that person, and I'm going to go to a different selection tool. This one is, I'm going to try a couple different, and the answer is which selection tool to use in Photoshop, whichever one works best. So I'm going to try quick selection tool with a fairly small brush, and it looks like it knows almost what I want to cut out. So I have a selection area of just the person. I'm going to go up to Edit and down to what's that tool called? Content Aware. Actually, I'm going to try a little different. Sorry, go up to Edit, down to Fill, Edit to Fill, and I'm going to fill with Content Aware this time. So I fill with Content Aware. I'm going to save it at normal. I'm going to use the opacity, preserve it at 100%, and click OK. Now, wow, look at that. It just magically disappears. I can do a Command or Control D to get rid of the marching ants. Now there's a little ghost image, but that's probably easier to start with than the whole person. So you have just seen how to get rid of the person from the picture in the master's flag. You can rebuild a golf cart here if you'd like with your clone stamp tool. You can try a selection tool such as quick selection, or you can also go to the lasso tool or magnetic lasso tool. And the magnetic lasso, click. Every time I turn a corner, click, 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 click. Double click ends a lasso. And it looks like you can see that it's not a perfect science. I'm going to have to delete this to get back. So this is probably not going to work as well. Here I am. Let me try Edit to Fill, Content Aware, click OK. Oh, I didn't do as good of a job. Command D to get rid of those marching ants, and I can try again. So again, the answer is, what selection tool do you use that we did last time? The answer is whatever works. So thank you for watching.